Hey everybody, it's Dan, the Git School Dude, again today with a short video to teach you how to remove a file from all of Git history. Like I said, it's going to be a short video today. You might ask the question, well, why would you ever want to remove files from all Git history? There's only a few rare cases where you'd ever want to do this. In fact, you should try not to do it. I'll touch on that in a second. But really the biggest use cases for this would be, hey, I accidentally committed a password like a moron into my ASCII source code repository. Or let's say you were accidentally committing copyrighted images or data of some kind that you weren't supposed to, you found out later. Another good use case would be developers or maybe yourself, you were accidentally committing unneeded large files that are just bloating your repo. So there's a number of cases for why you'd want to do this. And it's actually kind of difficult. Git does not make it easy to remove files from all commit history. It's of course easy to remove a file using the git rm command. But remember, because Git stores all the history of the entire repo, this will delete a file, but only from a certain point in history forward. And that's not what we're talking about today. So, you may remember from a previous video, my history emulator Git repository. It's basically an empty repository. There is one script called create commits that lets me create a string of commits easily. And you'll notice that recently I added a README file. And if you look at git log, you'll see that I added that 5 commits back. So if you're a Git connoisseur, you may right away say, hey, it's only 5 commits back. We can rebase that out of the history. And if you're thinking that, good on you, because that is probably your first line of resort. In this particular case, or your first line of defense, I'm sorry. In this particular case, that's not going to work because I have purposefully pushed this state to the origin. So this, let me show you, the origin is just GitHub. So this is my Git School Dude history emulator origin. And so this is emulating the idea of, it's right now it's just me doing this development, but in a real system you may have hundreds of developers all using the same origin. That's what this simulates basically. So as you'll notice, the README file's already here, and right on the front page, we describe what the project is, and oops, oh man, I accidentally committed my social security number and my phone number. Ooh, yeah, that's not gonna be good. So obviously this is way overblown. Don't ever do that. And that leads me to my next point about this. Before I show you the command, which is pretty ugly, on how to do this and the implications of doing it, I just want to point out that if you can, you need to be diligent about what goes into your repo from the very beginning and all the way through your development. And so, all these repos are the full history, like I said before. So, if you make a change here, well, some Joe Schmo cloned it 2 months ago. He's still going to have your social security number that you accidentally committed unless he forcibly updates it. So what I'm trying to express to you is that Git is super powerful in its ability to have all of its history locally. You need to be especially careful that you don't commit things that shouldn't be committed for a number of reasons, especially passwords and such. So obviously, if you actually do commit a password, the first thing you should do is change your password before you do anything. And yeah, you should remove it from the history. I'm about to show you how to do that, but obviously, be smart about these things. One last thing. Because this operation that I'm going to show you actually changes the Git history, you probably don't want to do this yourself unless you are leading the team or you're the integrator. You have some position of authority, because if you just try to do this as a developer and push your rewritten history up to origin, you're probably going to hear about it unless you're sort of a trusted source. So anyway, enough lecturing. here's basically how you do it. So, oops. You'll notice we're on the master branch. The README's here. The README's what we want to remove. So get out your pen and paper because this is a long one. You want to do git filter branch -- index filter, and then in single quotes git rm cached -- ignore unmatch, and then this argument is the path to your file name. So if it were in a directory called dir, you'd do readme.md. Obviously you get that, can't seem to spell, but this is at the top level, so we'll just do readme.md. And then the final argument here is the history range in which you want to remove this file from. So I'm going to do head, but this actually, if you look at the man page, it actually accepts this notation of first commit you want to start from, .. then the last commit. In this case, we want to do it to our current state in the master branch. And in this example, the master branch is the branch that everybody uses, and it's the latest state. That's clearly what you want to run this operation on. You don't want to do it to an older branch because that's not gonna do anything. You want to get rid of it out of all your branches and in the latest state possible. So we're going to run this command. I'm going to remove this part because with that part we're just saying, hey, remove it from all commits, from the root commit to head. So we hit enter, and here's what happens. It goes ahead and it rewrites the commits that contained this README file. So we go ahead and flip over to GitHub. And I haven't refreshed the page yet. Let's go ahead and go to the commits area. And we will see that the head commit here is A66EA. Okay. And that's on the master branch. If we look at the head commit here, it is 6115B. This should be expected. Remember, we rewrite the history for any commit that had the README in it. And as a sanity check, if we do an ls, there is no README file in here anymore. And so what's interesting here is, the first commit in which it was introduced 5 commits back was CF3D, and one, just look right before that, A7960. So that's the commit right before the README was introduced. And I just want to point out that this process actually won't rewrite any of the commits before the introduction of the file. So as an example, this, you remember GitHub here, this is reflecting the old state. I haven't pushed this state, I've only done this locally. So what we're seeing here are the 5 commits after the README was introduced, and the READMEs exist in these commits. The commit before that is A7960, which is the one we were just looking at. But everything from the README on, if you compare CF3D0, 24CF, they're all new commits. So I just wanted to point that out. So if you need to remove a file from the root commit forward, every single one of your commits will be rewritten by this process. And if you've seen some of my other videos, especially the rebase video, you probably will be wondering, what are the implications of rewriting all the commits? So I kind of want to show you what the implications are of that. And probably the easiest way to do that would be, before we push this state out, I'm going to go into /temp, and I'm just going to git clone this repo again. Let me just grab the address, and it's easy to copy and paste. I say it's easy. Okay. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to simulate the idea of another user having this repo just in their area. So I've done it as a Dan user on my computer, but imagine this is Joe Schmo on his computer, and he's also contributing to this. And as you'll notice, in his version, he still has the README, of course, because we didn't push the other version. So if we go back to our version, and we're going to go ahead and try to push this. So just as a sanity check, we're on the master branch. We rewrote oops, we rewrote the last 5 commits, as you recall. So let's go ahead and push, git push. That wants my user info. And you will notice this rejected message that says non-fast forward. So this is the same message you would get if you tried to rebase commits that have been shared among other people. It's basically just saying, hey, my master branch has non-fast forward changes compared to your branch. That's because we rewrote the last 5 commits, and master branch in the origin knows nothing about that. So long story short, what we want to do is just force push this, because in this case we don't care. We know what we're doing. We know we want to get rid of the history of that README, and so the way that you do that is give it the git -- force. Oops, I'm sorry. Git push -- force. Boom. It wants my info again. And you'll notice that the push went through this time. So this action actually changed what's in origin now. So if we go ahead and flip over here and we reload the page, you'll notice that our README is gone. It doesn't exist. It's as if it never existed. So this added README commit was rewritten, but it doesn't have any content anymore. Purposefully. So that's good news. So let's remember we cloned in /temp a simulation of Joe Schmo using this repo as another developer, and of course he still has the README because we haven't done anything. So at some point in the future, you know, Joe Schmo may do a git fetch, and notice that origin master, Joe Schmo's reference of what origin's master branch says, had a forced update. And so that happened because we force updated it just a few minutes ago. But remember, that doesn't change his local branch at all, right? So we're still on the master branch, and we still have a README. Remember, a git fetch can never change your working tree. But when we go to merge with origin master, you're going to see what happens. So let's write a merge commit. Merge made by recursive strategy. So we still have a README, and that might be confusing to you because the origin said that we shouldn't have a README. And what we've actually seen here, so just want to show you that I have an alias. I've shown this in other videos. This just shows git log in a graph view, which is going to be far more enlightening. So if we show git log in a graph view, you'll notice that we now have 2 lines of development, if you will, the added README plus 5 commits in 2 places. One, the one that we had in the master branch, and then the other one, which is the new rewritten history. Now the merge didn't have any conflicts because we didn't change that README file at all in our branch. So what we're looking at here, and I'm not going to get too much into this, if you look into the git rebase man page, there's a whole section about recovering from upstream changes and rewritten history, and it basically shows you this exact scenario of what happens here. And this is the problem with rewriting history, right? So Joe Schmo now still has a README, and they can move on. And as soon as they try to push their content to the origin, they're going to run into force push problems and all that. So what I want to get at here, and I realize this is a little too wordy, but when you do this, you need to instruct all your developers. The easiest way is to just delete their repo and reclone. Now I realize that could be a huge pain in the butt, especially if they're mid-development. There's ways of doing it. You can clone your own, move your repo off to the side, like as an example, Joe Schmo would move like this, and then basically reclone. Let's go grab that again. Reclone. And the fresh clone does not have the README. So like I was saying, if Joe Schmo in this example has some work that's done in the history emulator.old, one of the best ways to get that work into this area would be to add it as a remote and then cherry pick the content into a new development branch or directly onto the master branch in this repo. So I'm not going to show that. I have other videos about how to add remotes and do cherry picks. So yeah, it's as you can see with the process, you really don't want to ever have to do this. So the first step in having to remove files is don't ever get into the situation where you have to remove files. That said, I want to summarize it for you. You probably want to write this one down. Okay, so how do I do this? So here's the command: git filter branch index filter git rm cached ignore unmatch path to file from the root, and then the first commit in history where it shows up to ... to head, or you can leave the first commit part out. Okay. I hope you found that helpful. My name's Dan. I'll see you next time.